find out.
We're supposed to bring us a new budget, I think.
Yeah.
It's on the, e-board?
We have a new budget from SE May Kaiser on e-board.
It's on e-board, okay.
Everything submitted on board.
All right. Do we want to just have them come up, Ms. Beccaro? You all can come on up.
Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
Chairman Quigley.
So, last year we had a tough meeting discussing kind of where you were, your status. Why don't you just why don't we pick up where we left off and you give us a rundown on how things have gone since we last met.
All right. Since our last meeting, we certainly understood the concern of the Charter Advisory Board, and our board solicited the support of Darius Little, who is with Little's Executive Business Consulting. We certainly understand the need for a solid infrastructure with the business management with SMA, and so we were able to get in contact with Mr. Little and feel that with his support, we are headed in the right direction.
Okay, and you have, is this your new principal?
No, this is Darius Little.
Oh, this is Mr. Little.
Our
Okay.
consultant, yes.
Great. And so you're working with the board in what capacity?
Yes, sir, Mr. Quigley. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Darius Little, Little's Executive Business Consulting, and my responsibilities to the organization are to serve in the capacity of an executive business consultant. I am not an education expert. I've served on board, so I'll be straight up with you all so you'll know what you're dealing with here. I know it's a very complex situation. I am coming in from scratch as a consultant, attempting to get a grasp of the organization, the entire infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I'm talking about the day-to-day management. It was relayed to me that the board, the advisory board, had concerns about management, specifically top-heavy budgetary payments, for example, and many other items that I told them, frankly, would lead the board to see them as not being prudent managers of taxpayer funds. So I met with the staff and talked with them professionally. We had a few meetings. I've also attempted to get information from their previous management consultant, which is certainly not a competitor, because I know there's been a lot of communication with staff, and we have varying views here financially. So I was hoping that we could get into that, because I think that would remove some of the concerns that have been serving as an impediment to the chair and the organization. But we attached a packet for your board from my firm, and there should be 91 pages of attachments that are connected with that. So I am certainly not the boss of this board. I just stand here as a public servant and North Carolina native and a charter school supporter. And I just want you to know that I will be straight up with the board at all times. I have no conflicts of interest with the SMA. I have in writing, realizing that's public record, expressed my concerns. The staff has told me, frankly, that some of their concerns are directly related and pertaining to previous management. So I was hoping, I know how we handle things in the courthouse, I was hoping that Mr. McQueen would be here so that we could all work that out. I've never met him, so I don't know, I assume he's here, so that we could find out what exactly is going on. Because the representation of the board to me, my client has represented that Mr. McQueen's assertions are completely false, and the board vehemently denies that, and they would respectfully place blame for the board's concerns as to potential mismanagement at the foot of that company. Without belaboring the point, we would like to, as you read the notations from the packet that my firm sent to you all, for example, 2 weeks before the school was preparing to open, they had a contract with a consulting firm, and Torchlight specifically, and were advised that everything would be taken care of. Well, a few days before school, they are sitting there with nothing. You all care about young people. They were sitting there with nothing. So at that point, they contacted Mr. McQueen to attempt to find out what was going on. That is just one problem that I have verified with documentation. I told them I have no bone in the fight and that I have no problem coming before this board and throwing them under the bus if they're not straight up with me. I worked in the governor's office, and I'm known. I'll throw anybody under the bus. I'll drop a dime on my mom if she tells a lie. It helps everybody. You all are here to work. We're here to help children, and they are a minority. And I'm an African-American Republican, so I don't get into race stuff often. But they are a minority charter school. So I have advised them that they could serve as a model, as a footprint for our state, and they could be of benefit to you all. And as stewards of the people's money, you know, we're going to go in and streamline some things. Now, I'm going to be frank here now. If they need to have somebody handling their money, I want to make it clear that you all know my firm does not handle that. So nobody can use me as a scapegoat at SMA. We don't deal with that stuff. We handle infrastructure, management, and helping the organization to be better. I also have obviously corporate contacts in uptown Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live. I've spoken with people such as Michael Jordan, who's going to be getting with this organization. We're going to be getting them some money and helping them. They're a government contractor. They've been approved in SAM, so they have their DUNS, they have their cage code. But as I have observed in dealing with most people in education, they have a lot of knowledge, but not the day-to-day business management. So we're just trying to get a few things going, and I think they'll be okay in that regard. The other concerns you have, I'll be frank, and I've told them I was going to say this. I have nothing to do with that stuff. So I can't answer anything. But as far as management, day-to-day, infrastructure, told them not to use you all as a crutch. We are to be a partner with the state. We are not to be a crutch and use the state as a crutch. Go out and earn some money. If you're on a board, that's not to be in a community and brag about. You're supposed to be
Darius,
helping.
we've known each other for a while. I'm sure you remember me.
Yes, sir.
But we've known each other for a while, and you're very passionate about it. I think, I want to just get into kind of what we're looking at going forward.
Yes, sir.
Of what you're going to do this school year. I've just kind of looking through the budget. Can you kind of can somebody just kind of walk through how you came up with the revised budget that you did, and it's still tight, but I mean it's going to be tight with the number of students that you have to try to do everything. But you,
What is the number of students as of today?
As of today, we have 123 students.
Yeah, why don't we talk about the,
so is that you got a net loss of $15,000
Yes,
in the budget?
yes.
Okay, so where are you going to come up with $15,000?
Well, we have started to launch a fundraising campaign. We do an annual fundraiser as a board and as a school each year. And then we also have started to discuss launching a capital fundraising campaign. We write for grants. Each year, I believe last year, we were awarded about $25,000 in grants.
That's not what I saw.
So from other resources, we expect to make up that net loss.
And I'd like to also add Attorney Walker, just as a FYI for you and Chairman Quigley and the board. We do have Ms. Ruby Steele, who is standing behind the chair. She actually writes the checks and handles all of the money. In case you all needed her, we have her here.
Well, what's the administrative staff right now? I know we talked about that before. How many people do you have on staff in the administration?
In our administration, we have our principal, we have a director of operations, and then we have a clerical team of 2.
Okay.
Is that different than what you had last month when you were here?
No, that is the same.
principal, director of operations. What about there was like a director of recruitment?
There was a director of enrollment. That person, we have made some changes to better support our budget. So that person is part of our clerical team. She still has the responsibilities of enrollment and marketing, but she is also a part of our clerical team, our director of transportation, and that person will be sharing responsibilities. on a part-time basis. We have also reduced our curriculum director to a part-time status.
Okay. So you have made some changes.
You found an EC teacher for $20,000?
That is the $20,000 that we will, from the operational budget, and then the other portion of her salary is cited in the EC budget. So I believe her total salary is $40,000.
Okay, so that's, so when you've got these annual, that's state fund money?
Yes.
Okay.
But, so, okay, that's what's coming out of state, but you've got your federal revenue written in here, so do you have the federal expenses written in?
Yes.
Because you're saying that the salary that he saw was 20 grand, and that was from state. Where's the other 20?
If you look under federal expenses. Steele, do you want to speak to this?
Okay.
Just reach for that.
But under federal, okay, well, I'm looking at federal expenses, there's nothing in 060. You got Title I money, you got language acquisition, you got specialized special ed, but nothing's in 060.
No, we do not have anything in OC, so.
So where's the other $20,000 of this lady's salary?
How many EC students do you have?
We have identified 8 EC students who've been tested and are eligible for EC services. She's also identified another 11 that are tested.
One is, it's fine, it's just.
Could FBS comment on how much they've drawn down and their kind of cash financial position right now?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that
Yeah,
question?
we're asking FBS if they can kind of give us, from the state side, what's been drawn down and everything, so. Alexis or Leanne?
Excuse me.
Would you, oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Yes, thank you. For SMA, we have actually capped them at 154,000, which is how much they have drawn down. So we set their allotment at that amount until we had the final average daily membership, which the average daily membership came in at 111, I believe. Is that? Yeah, 111, which would be about, so they're about on budget.
For 34, for that being 34%.
For the 34%, so we will allot them, obviously they'll get their 68% in
November,
probably about
February, or
3 months,
whatever.
3 weeks.
So what would that make their total state revenue be then? Around $450,000? 500,000?
For 111, yeah, it's about,
340.
for I'd have to get that
If you
for
said
you.
if you were close, at 154,000, you were close on your.
Right,
third.
no, understood.
So then that'd be $462,000.
Where's
But
the
they're basing their new budget on
600.
121 with $673,000.
Do keep in mind that this is only base state funding. It would not include their EC funding.
That's their
and that.
state funding that they've.
Oh,
that
you're saying
they've set.
that's state EC?
I'm sorry, could
Okay,
you
so
repeat the
Are
question?
you saying their state EC money would be about 100 grand?
I'm saying that that has not been provided at that, it's not included in that
Figure.
amount.
Would it be for, I think she said they had 8 identified kids. Would it be that much, 100 grand?
What, at 4,000 or whatever, so
About
no,
30.
yeah.
It's about 4,000.
State, yeah.
So their
Which still
state
puts you
revenue-
almost
state
like
revenue's over-
$200,000
State
under what
revenue's
state revenue is.
overestimated.
Sorry, the estimated budget that they would have is actually about 654,000.
Okay, so that's not that bad. It's only about 25,000 over.
He's good to go.
Yeah. They're about, she said 654 and they did 673 is what they. Yeah. Yeah, so we're at 40,000 in the hole. That's assuming everything, and that's assuming everything else is right.
All right, so what do we,
So she said
there anything-
654,000.
no, I think we're good. Thank you, Alexis.
So
She
654?
said 654.
Uh,
So they're
and please
about
keep-
25 grand
Excuse
over.
me, I'm sorry. Please keep in mind, these are estimates based on what we
Right.
have right now.
So that would add another about 25 grand to the loss.
Yeah.
So we're about 40,000 loss. But I think Mr. Little said you guys are lending them money?
And I wanted to add another point that their projections were based on having a little over 200 students, which now they're over 80 students short due to physical space.
Well, this projection supposedly is based on who's actually there.
It's based on 121, but they're gonna get
Yeah,
funded on 111.
yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, that was not relayed to me. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, I mean, I don't wanna like go on and on, but I think they need to continue working on this budget.
Yeah, it needs some
And
help
kind of
still.
rework on it a little bit more. And go, I mean, I really don't see any need to take any kind of action right now.
They
Just
need
me
to fix
speaking,
it.
they need to fix the budget, and I think it's something we just gonna, throughout the year, I think we need to keep tabs on what's going on and making sure that things are running smoothly.
Can we just have them submit an updated budget
In November,
in November?
just so they don't have to come.
I don't think they need to come.
Can we ask for a monthly budget report
Yeah,
Yes.
made to OCS?
yep, yeah, we'd like a monthly budget
Make sure
report.
you get that from Mr. Machado. We'd also like to add that we're going, in my opinion, I'm really pushing them, because I'd like to come back. We're going to give you also with Mr. Machado a fundraising report. Now, that's not something we deal with directly. It's teaching board members how to go out in the community and do that. And I've already got some corporate sponsors from Uptown Charlotte who are very excited at the potential of SMA, which I think has also motivated the board. I won't get into all of the other particulars. I've outlined that in my report as to board management, hands-on activity, and other matters which may have potentially concerned the board. But I promise you we're working on that. We're going to have a tight infrastructure, and they are connected officially now to corporate folks uptown who are going to help alleviate some of the financial concerns that I think this board has, and also help the state. The taxpayers shouldn't have to just do everything. You all should be able to maneuver around some. So we're going to be a partner and hope to be a leader and example in that regard. Thank you.
Could we also see an actual versus budget monthly report versus just budgeted? So how you're drawing down throughout the year?
And just so you'll know, moving forward, I will be participating. I was just letting the board know as full transparency that up until this date, I had nothing to do with any of that other than receiving attachments and correspondence via email.
Do we, is the principal, he was here last time, right?
Yes,
And is he here?
he is. Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Fisher.
Okay, yeah, I remember him. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Are you, there was reference in this report about board members kind of being on campus and micromanaging, and Mr. Little addressed that in the report.
I think that was the concern of the previous administration.
Okay,
I have a very firm handle on the day-to-day education operation. They handle the business they need to handle, and I have 123 scholars that I answer to. So we are very clear as to our roles, and the scholars make me aware of what my role is. So that is absolutely my concern.
okay,
Okay?
sounds good. Okay, so we'll just need a monthly budget report, budget to actuals, and then anything else that the Office of Charter Schools requests.
We'll make sure Mr. Machado, Ms. Vaquero, and all of you all receive everything on time. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Back on schedule. We'll start our low enrollment presentations. Is there an introduction for this, or are we just jumping right in?
There's not an introduction.
Oh, great. So if we could have Tillery
Okay. This is
come
low
forward.
enrollment now?
Yep. We're back on schedule. Okay, so who do we have here from Tillery?
Hi, I'm Chrissy Fisher. I'm the chair of the board, and I'll let everyone else go through and introduce themselves.
Teresa Harrison, principal.
I'm Dr. Fred Engel, on the board, local employer.
My name is Eddie Goodall. I'm a consultant.
Diana LaRiviere, vice chair.
Rhonda Dillingham, board member.
Anthony Rodriguez, consultant.
Okay, great. So I guess I'd just like to hear briefly kind of like where.
Oh, please have a seat.
Yeah, just sitting there.
Thank you.
Kind of where things broke down in terms of the enrollment. You know,
Well-
how did we end up here?
We are a small rural charter school. We're geographically remote. We're located in Biscoe, North Carolina, which is a town of about 1,500 people located in Montgomery County. And Montgomery County is made up of about 50% national forest. We started as a K-2 school, and we currently have 63 students enrolled, with 2 more starting tomorrow, an additional on Monday. I think kind of where we broke down is that we originally were aiming for 144 in our application, and we realized we were more remote than we anticipated. We thought we could pull from the larger cities around us, which are Asheboro and Albemarle, but we found out that we only have about a 25-mile reach. We made sure in our marketing that we're providing free transportation and free reduced lunch, because the children we are servicing in our county are economically disadvantaged, and there's currently no school choice in Montgomery County.
I mean, are you still actively recruiting students?
Yes, we haven't stopped marketing. Like I said, we've picked up 3 this morning. Miss Harrison had she gave a tour yesterday of a family of 2 students who came, loved what they saw. They came in this morning, enrolled, and are starting tomorrow.
And so what's that put you at, 67?
66, because we have 2 starting tomorrow and another new student starting on Monday. So our enrollment our efforts haven't stopped. We're continuing to attract as many students as possible. Can I have Eddie Goodall? Okay, I'm sorry.
So I guess the other question is, so what was your projection again in the CSADM system? Was it 140?
144.
I mean, that's just a huge gap. What's good is that you haven't, based on the last report from FBS, you haven't drawn down very much money at all. I guess that's just a pretty significant, more than 50% below. Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're probably gonna be at about 65, 70 for the year.
Yes.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, Alexis.
So to be clear, they have drawn down significant funds and will be in the hole for their second drawdown. So
I thought they had only
For about, how much are they in the hole?
so about $85,000, which will come off their second installment, which will put their second installment an estimate of $50,000 or less, which we'll have to take them through to February for state funds without the adjustments of any mini budget bills and et cetera. So there is concern
So how
related
much
to
have they
that.
drawn down?
So $196,000.
Okay.
So that we actually did a lot, although their projection was based on 144, we provided their allotment based on 125 due to some of the concerns before we actually had a number of their number of students, and the actual ADM is 60.
Okay.
So they're in bigger trouble than we thought.
Okay. What's the what steps has the board made or the principal made in terms of staffing cuts and things like that? Can someone walk us through that?
It's a great number of kids per grade and
Sure. And yeah, if you don't mind coming up. So based on one of the things that the school was very careful of was they only hired with what they knew definitely was going to come in the door, and based on we didn't hire an extra first grade teacher or an extra second grade teacher, so that's only one per grade there. And we do have 2 kindergarten classes based on the current enrollment. So that stayed the same. We have an EC teacher. We did not. We waited. Our original budget had my apologies. Our initial budget had teacher assistants with each grade. We held off. We waited until the first day. That was our advice to the school. And we were just very frugal with the money that we spent in terms of looking at salaries. As you see, if you add staffing and wages as a percentage of the budget that we submitted is only 53%. Some schools like to get more top heavy with these budgets, so we stayed right around the 50%, which is actually a recommendation that a lot of schools are given. In terms of the budget, we do have 197 drawn down based on the budget that we submitted to you guys. We also have the access grant. I understand that has not been submitted just yet, or been passed in the budget just yet, but out of the money that we've already expensed or requested from the state, over $70,000 of that money is to be reimbursed with that access grant that we do have. According to the access grant, we plan on spending $180,000 of our access grant money this year in the budget. Additionally, in our budget, we've planned to spend in between August to November or to October 31st, a total of $235,000, including what we have for the access grant. We've spent $197,000 total. We still have one more payroll, which is about $18,000, including wages and benefits. One more payroll period because we pay our teachers twice a month on the 5th and the 20th. And then
How much did you say payroll was?
payroll is $18,000 per
pay period?
Yes, and we do 2
that's
times a
every
month,
2
so it's
weeks,
about
basically?
right now it's a little over $36,000. And that's been consistent. We do have part-time employees where we do limit the hours of those employees for specials. So those are limited hours. They're only in the school for when they actually are, teaching those classes.
So how many staff do you have right now, including teachers? Because you said you had 4 teachers, an EC teacher, and then what?
We
other
have
staff?
seven full-time staff, and then we have 3
3
part-time, and their hours are limited to 2 classes a
Mhm.
week.
About
So
13
they're-
hours. Then.
Yeah, maximum, if they're allowed to go over their hours.
does this affect or impact their access grant at all?
So with the access grants,
Jay, if they don't make the 80, are they still entitled to the access grant?
So we notified them on the 16th that, generally we haven't reimbursed anything because of the state budget, but we also notified them that being under 80 puts them out of compliance with state law. And part of the assurances of the CSP grant generally for the federal program and our access program, is that being out of compliance means no reimbursement. So there's sort of the first question of being under 80 students is out of compliance with CSP, and we're not able to reimburse at that point. I think the second question is, even if they're above 80, it's materially different than what was proposed in the sub-grant plan to us. So that's sort of a different conversation of risk, but yes, being under 80 is technically out of compliance with the access program.
And I'm not sure if you all are aware, but the school did submit an amendment to their application regarding the number of students and their geographically remote location.
Okay, any other questions right now?
One of the things that we'd like to point out is that none of our funding is obviously based on last year's funding numbers from the state and local funds. Additionally, so we also left out any we kept for EC funding, we kept the state amount that is given, but we left out the federal IDEA funds. We also left out Title I and Title II funds, as those haven't come in yet. Those numbers are not going to be solid until later on. So we just wanted to notify you that those funds are not in the budget.
You don't have your local number for this year yet?
We based it off, so Montgomery County has not gotten back to us on the local number. We've submitted our numbers to the LEA per their request, but they have not given us a number. So we just used last year's number of $13.56 per student. And we're pulling from 6 different LEAs, so we use Montgomery County as the obvious number, but we were pulling from obviously Moore County, which is significantly higher, almost around $2,000. Stanley County, which is higher, and then Asheboro City, which we only have 1 student, and then Randolph County and Richmond County.
Okay. Any other questions from the board right now?
So let's assume they don't get this $180,000 from the access grant. Are they gonna be able to make it here? Not if, Shouse is saying they've already pulled down a lot of their.
I guess that would be what is the plan? In part of this, you might not have, and I understand you submitted an amendment, but whether or not, I think the reality is right now you're below the statutory minimum. What is, and coupled with the financial issue of you've drawn down a large amount, and you're talking about we're talking about the access grant, but we have to operate as if that's not going to happen. So what is the plan to stay open financially?
Mr. Chairman, if I can, before that, address the issue of the 80 enrollment. We think, and we said, and hopefully you got a letter, that we had already met the requirement of, I think it's 115C, 218, 1B13. I'm sure everybody knew that. That statute. We stated in our application that we would have 144. It would not have been a very positive thing for us to look at and interpret the law like you have and said, oh, 80 is the minimum, so we may have fewer than 80, but we certainly can't put that there. We actually thought we would have 144, so we certainly went with that. But so we think we did. We stated in the application many times, and I've got a list that I don't need to read to you, that this was a very remote geographical area and there was a very small student population there. Right now we have 1 out of every 14 students in the whole county in K2. If Wake County had a charter that had K2 and 1 out of every 6 students, they would have 2,300 students. So I know it's relative. I've even got a question as to whether or not the statute means in the initial year there should be 80. I did a good bit of research, and and this is going way back, and we might not want to get into these weeds, but I think the original application was talking about when the school was developed in all its grades. So, because in 1996, they were talking.
You're saying you didn't need 80 kids until year 5?
No, I'm not saying that. If we had filed an application that looked like that, you would turn it down certainly, and we wouldn't. I'm just saying that when the law was written, I have several people, including the House Education Committee co-chair, that says they weren't interested in the number of kids. They were talking about kitchen table charters. The House actually had no minimum in their first bill. The Republicans added 100, and they negotiated on 65. But that's kind of beside the point. And I don't want to, really go there with this argument. But what I would say is, we filed an application. It was for more than 80 kids, but we meet the exception. There's no provision by you or the Office of Charter Schools to say how you meet the exception. There's no question. You just say, are you going to have more than 65 kids or not? You don't say, check here if you want to meet the exception. So we wouldn't want to understate what we thought we'd really have, which would be 144, and hurt ourselves by filing an application with 60 or 70 students.
You're
So that sounds to me like you
snipping
said.
up on words there, Mr.
It is.
Goodall.
It is.
When you put in this application, initially, you said you were gonna have at least 144 students. Last year, you were supposed to open, but you didn't. Because you couldn't meet every
That's not
year.
true.
When we were supposed to.
We're open this year. We're
So
supposed to open
Monroe
this
was the
year.
one that was delayed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been in the RTO for a year nonetheless, and did you just realize September that you're not gonna meet 80 students?
Or that you were a small county?
Right.
No,
I
we
mean,
realized that.
we're a
We
small county
we
and where your
realized that it was going to be
population
difficult
was.
from the start, and you did too, because we told you there were 800 K2 students in the whole county. So we all knew that, and we all knew that that's certainly a compelling reason to have less than 80. I just think we met the statute. Is what I'm saying.
Except that you assured us at the interview that you thought you could do this. So now you're saying, but not really.
Ms. Turner, no. Believe me, at that interview, I thought we would get more than 144. Believe me, no, we thought we would get more.
I think
In
what-
terms of enrollment, enrollees that we had, going into the beginning of the school year, we definitely believed that we would have over 80. We actually had a budget of expected, a budget of what we had, and then a budget if we were below, which was at 80. What we found out, like, as Mrs. Fisher said earlier, was that kids from more distant areas that we had ready to come to the school ended up opting out. People that showed up on the open house and reneged on that because it was too long of a ride or things along those lines. Those are factors on the first day. Obviously, you running a school, you have transportation as well, but parents kind of jump at any little, whether you're opening a week late because of something regarding the facility. Those things happen. We've obviously had.
Okay. I'm just going to
situations
pause you
from
right there
that,
because
so-
we need to
Yes, sir.
keep this moving. Just in case, what is just very specific, what is the plan should you remain open next month after? Where are we cutting money from, assuming the Access Grant isn't going to come?
Sure. So Miss Harrison and I had a conversation with Mr. Whalen regarding this, and he had spoken to, if you go through this process or whatnot, and you're open that there could be a percentage, obviously, that would be allocated, or a number allocated for students to finish up the Access Grant for the first year. So we did a budget that has not been approved because we weren't brought to the attention that this would, this was a decision that this would be cut. We did it based off of what you guys asked us to do. And we came up with a budget that we cut the Goodall consulting fee to make up for the funds that we would lose for the Access Grant if it were allocated. Well, I think we came down to, we're currently, each child's funded at $1,250 for the year, or for
And so
the grant.
If you cut that,
We would have and then cut the Goodall consulting fee down. We would have a $2,946.85 surplus at the end of the year.
And that's without firing any other staff?
I'm sorry, that is only taking, that's taking off $10,000 in salary and moving our office manager to a part-time position in the front. And there would be no one cut from the staff at all.
Okay.
But it would just be that moving someone from full-time to part-time. Who would be able to fully function in that role.
I think it would be beneficial for us real quick to go into closed session. So, Mr. Chair, I move that we go into closed session to discuss with our attorneys, attorney-client privileged information.
I'll second.
Okay. It's properly moved and second. All in favor? All right.
Says it, you're in my
They come out here and they say who's in the school because, there has been a precedent in the past. And you need to get up and say, I understand you closed Global Achievers last year, whatever that school's called. And, but I also know that they had
Brad needs to have it. And, for him.
See how we operate.
Just let Fred sit there, so when they come back, it'll be more convenient.
Pass out tissue.
Just the issue.
Christmas in October. Get some lights. Yeah.
It's all right.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I move we go back into open session.
Second.
Properly moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Tillery Charter right now? Okay. So we will reach out to you via the Office of Charter Schools should we ask you to come before us again. And any required follow-up or documents that they request, you be sure to get them to them. All right, and we're gonna hear now from Blue Green Academy. Yeah, and just so you know, we're taking the amendment request under advisement, but we're not going to act on it at this time.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and all of the dignitaries here. We are Blue Green Academy. This is Miss Daybreak, and I am Dina DeShazer. This is our Director of Operations, and I'm the principal of Blue Green Academy. We also have brought our parents in support of Blue Green Academy. If y'all can just stand.
Right.
So.
So same question. Kind of walk us through where we are as of today in terms of enrollment and kind of how we ended up in this space.
Yes, we actually prepared a presentation, and so we wanted to make sure that that was up so that you could have a visual.
Sure,
as
yeah, we
go
have it
through
on eBoard as well, so we can.
It's not a whole bunch of slides, is it?
No, it's only 7. We'll be 5 minutes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
forgot to say I'm recused.
Yep. Let the record show that Ms. Turner recused.
Yes,
Yes.
and then. All right, so we definitely want to make sure that we go through the outline of our presentation. We will first discuss the facility so that you understand what happened and how we got to where we are today. We also wanted to discuss our current enrollment as well as the ways that we positioned ourselves to be financially viable, as well as increasing our student enrollment. So we will also talk about our marketing efforts that are currently in place.
So with our facility, we had an opening delay based on, we're in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in Forsyth County. We had to push back student orientation by 1 week since we had not yet got our certificate of occupancy. We also communicated to parents a potential contingency plan, which created some issues and impacted enrollment because the contingency plan was not, it was one of the old district buildings with past concerns of air and water contamination. So safety is our priority. We pulled out of that. And so we went into our first week of field trips where we did museums, team building lessons in the park, movies, Dave & Buster's, Botanical Gardens, college tours, and also the public library. Second week, we had our certificate of occupancy, and we are now in the building. So that pretty much presented a problem with our enrollment, whereas many parents pulled out because of those opening delays.
So what was the exact start date that you were supposed to start on, the projected start date?
August 19th.
And then you started?
The 26th.
And so you lost 70 students, basically. Was it just they were like, I'm not going to send my kids to go to the movies or on a field trip in the first week, and they just withdrew? Or
I think it was more of the contingency plan, the delay of opening. So another charter school actually started the same week that we were going to start, so some of them went there. And then our contingency plan, because of that past that prior concern, many parents felt that they just did not want their kid to go there. They got scared and a little frazzled because when we called them back a week later, that's basically what they were saying. I'm sorry, I just got scared, and I just had to put them where, I felt that they would be safe. So
What was the other charter school that opened?
It wasn't one that. Oh, it was one that was already.
It's an older school.
Older school.
Got it.
Yeah.
So as you may recall, we put in a projection of 200 students, and we were going to pretty much put in a revision for that for 135. However, we decided not to do that when we got up to 198 applications from the news report that we had. So we ended up with 124 enrollments, and out of those enrollments, after the issue with the facility, we end up with a enrollment of 56. So as of today, or as of yesterday, we have 54 in our head count as far as bodies and seats. As far as day 20 is concerned, we had 57 students on day 20.
Well, do you know what the average daily membership was? Is that the 57?
That's the 57.
Okay, so you, Alexis, do you have that number now? I know that, you know, when we were looking at it before, there was some issue with Power School about how the students were put in.
Yes. And I can explain.
Yeah, and maybe Alexis can answer, since this kind of directly relates before you get to the budget, so that I can know how much has been drawn down.
There are issues with their Power School, well, I don't want to say issues with their Power School, with the submission of their principal monthly report, so we do not have an official number. The number we're working with in school business is just an estimate based on the Office of Charter Schools, what they have provided us. So there is no official average daily membership or a principal monthly report at this time.
Do you know how much they've been allotted and how much they've drawn down?
I do. We actually allotted based on 100 students, kind of similar to the prior school. Then that came to about 183,000. We actually, when we got the notification of the low enrollment, we capped their allotment at $100,000, of which they have drawn down just over 72,000.
Okay. So they haven't drawn down as much.
So haven't drawn down as much as Tillery, but Tillery has, what, maybe 10 more students in their ADM. Okay.
And also with that PMR report, what happened was the data manager that's no longer with us doubled. We have duplicate students. So we're talking to Power School. They have to merge those students. The tickets are already in. I gave it to Amanda Cruz, the 2 ticket numbers. I gave it to Amanda Cruz this morning.
So this budget on the PowerPoint that's your new budget?
That is our budget based on 57 students. This budget is also based on 4 staff members. And so the changes with regard to the budget were made in the salaries of the administration, and as well as the number of administrators. So we had 4 administrators, now we only have 2. Initially we had 7 teachers, and we created a budget with 2 teachers, so that there's 4 staff members total.
So 2 administrators, 2 teachers.
Yes.
Give me the grade breakdown, honey.
I'm sorry?
Grade breakdown.
It's 5th and 6th grade.
6. So they're pretty evenly.
Exactly, yes.
Is it 31 fifth graders?
It is 31 5th graders and 25 6th graders. 28 boys and 28 girls. We are a single gender school.
Well, you're 2 single gender schools, right? Well, kind of.
It is two schools in one.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's because I thought that was kind of amazing that worked out 28 and 28.
Yes, we didn't do that on purpose.
That's the best thing I've heard all day.
Okay,
31
so I
and
mean,
25 is 66. So where's 57? I'm not. Is my math off?
No, we had one leave since day 20.
How many 5th graders do you have right now?
There are 31 5th graders.
How many 6th graders right now?
25.
56.
So that's 56.
Do you anticipate any more attrition from any of the students that are already there?
You said, do we anticipate any more?
Do you expect any other students to leave?
No. I expect that we will gain more. We gave a tour yesterday, and we've had a lot of inquiry coming in. So I can suspect that we'll get about 5 or 10 more students before the year is out.
And this budget is built on the last year's revenue projections for the state budget, or?
We revised the state revenue based on the number of students. So.
What is it?
Using that figure, that number. But they base number per kid?
Yes, yes.
How many staff did the other school have?
We also made cuts with the facility lease. We were able to renegotiate that, and our technology and supplies were donated.
And you're still spending $48,000 in transportation?
Yes, that is we use a charter company for student, which picks up our students at the shuttle stops.
And that's one bus.
And it is for one bus.
Alexis, would you consider this school a going concern in the same way the other school was, or less of a concern because they have drawn down less money?
Less so. I mean, if we're comparing two schools with very low enrollment, which puts them in a financial solvency risk by definition, they do appear to be more cognizant of the making budget adjustments to meet the lower enrollment.
Yeah.
Do you have any EC students?
Yes, we do. We have about 8 identified. Still waiting on 2 IEPs, and we are currently applying for the EC grant and the Title I grant.
Who is serving your EC students? What teacher?
Right now, we do have an EC teacher. That position would have to be cut with this approval of this budget, and we would contract those services with another contact we have who has already agreed to move in that direction. And we put that in the budget under contract services.
That's like your OT, PT, speech or whatever?
Yes. And this lady works for another charter, and she will work with us on the paperwork and things of that sort so that we have that licensed person in place.
So she would do our IEPs, run our meetings, and services along with the speech.
They have 2 administrators and 2 teachers right now.
She wouldn't give you the day-to-day services.
Who's providing the instruction? You can't.
What was the
Who's
question?
providing the EC instruction?
The EC instruction currently is provided by our EC teacher.
So one of the 2 teachers is EC?
Yes.
Okay. Are you all teaching too?
Yes.
Yes.
Even now.
That's the right answer.
Blue.
Green.
Okay, it's gonna be a long year. It's gonna be a long year, potentially. That's the hope, if you can keep this thing afloat. But at this point, given that you're below this, were you part of the CSP grant?
We
The
are
access
not.
grant?
No, but we do plan to apply for the grant that's coming up.
Okay, so I think similar to the other school, depending on, we'll be in contact with you via the Office of Charter Schools. You are below the statutory minimum for student enrollment, and so there could be significant consequences because of that. But at this point, we'll just communicate through the Office of Charter Schools should we need anything else from you or need you to return to report to us, which is highly likely.
Okay.
But otherwise, just keep that budget close.
Will do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And at this time, we'll hear from Monroe Academy. I know, me too. All right. Welcome. I guess same question, introduce yourself, and then start with kind of where are we at today and how did we get here?
Yes, my name is Jim Stegall. I'm the vice chair of Monroe Charter Academy. With me are our principal, Dr. Camilla Ford, Catherine,
Kathleen Priva.
Kathleen, sorry, I always get that wrong. A board member. We also have with us Goodall Consulting, whom you've met before, Eddie and Anthony. We were expecting 129 students. We had enrolled and were ready to open on that Wednesday morning. We got 74 who showed up at the school. I would like to point out, before anything else, that of the 55 families that did not show up for school and opted to go elsewhere, 50 of those were white. Now, if you know anything about Monroe, we are a very divided city. Roughly equal proportions of African American, Hispanic, and white families. We work very hard to try to recruit, through our marketing efforts, a diverse school. That was one of our top goals. If you look back through our application, you'll see that we reference that. And we thought we'd done a pretty good job with the applications that we'd had when we looked at the racial and demographic makeup. It was very disappointing to us the way it worked out with that particular demographic choosing at the last minute, opting for something else. Of course, we immediately hit the phones, tried to understand what was going on and why. We found in many cases families would not talk to us, and so we got very little feedback, nothing useful as to why those families did not show up. We didn't stop there, though. We jumped right into it. I had board members going out that first weekend, canvassing neighborhoods, knocking on doors. Since that time, of the 74 students we started with, we've lost exactly one, and we've gained 12. So we have 85 students actually in the school as of today. We understand that our ADM, because of the way it averages out over the 20 days, we come out to 78. So we've adjusted our budget to reflect that.
So what have been the significant budget changes that you've made to account for that?
To begin with, we were very conservative in hiring, so we didn't hire anybody that as it turns out, that we had to fire later on. We have provided, I think, besides the budget, there's sort of a rundown here on some cuts that Goodall Consulting.
Has reduced its fee, that's one thing.
That was one of the main things right there. Goodall Consulting reduced the fee. We also got some breaks from some of our other vendors. The church that we're renting space from has cut the rent by $2,000 a month. There's a little bit of professional development funding has been cut back, some on facilities remodeling and maintenance. And of course, we're still working with last year's numbers on that as well in terms of per student funding, that sort of thing. I think it's significant that we've been able to come up with a budget that works without having to reduce our full-time staff salaries. We're very adamant about that. We have not cut transportation. And the meals program. The meals program has not been cut. In fact, it's making a little bit of money. Which will, yeah. Okay. We'll also have a little bit of an income stream that's not included in here in terms of the after-day care or after-school care and before-school care.
Where could we have FBS comment on their cash or their financial position as of right now?
Yes, their projection was 144, and their allotment was based on that. Their actual was 78, as the gentleman stated. They have used their in the whole as to what they would have received by about $15,000. So make an amount that could be made up if they made the budget cuts.
Okay.
We agree. We still looked at the numbers. We've spent I believe $157,000 approximately right now, as of this morning. Right now, what we have left for until the end of October, until we receive November funds or at that point. I believe it's 189,000 is what we have for our adjusted budget. That includes, I believe, $18,000 to $19,000 in the last payroll for the month, and then that leaves we've budgeted about 19,000 or 18 to 19,000 in expenses total, but we've actually including that was the whole month of October. So things like rent and things like that, which we cut on the first of every month, a check for every first of the month, those are already paid. So those have already come out of those state funds. So we're expecting between a $7,000 and $10,000 to be $7,000 to $10,000 under what we budgeted for this month with our adjusted budget.
So how many staff do you have right now?
So currently we have 5 teachers, 3 part-time teachers, and 1 EC director / resource teacher. And then we have an office manager and then myself, the principal.
Okay. Other questions from Monroe? They're right on the line for their ADM. So kind of the same, you all are the closest to the statutory minimum, but you are still below the minimum. So as we shared with the other schools, there may be significant consequences for that, but at this time we're just going to refer you to Office of Charter Schools, and they'll ask for any more reports, or if you need to come back, we'll keep you abreast of that.
Actually, he said today's enrollment's 85.
Yeah.
Right. Right. But depending if it's by ADM or whatnot.
So our ADM doesn't change though, right? I mean, that's set in stone now for the rest of the year.
ADM does
isn't
not
it?
change.
All right, so.
And that's 78.
You could still get local funds.
Right,
though,
and we'll
from
continue to
the
do
programs.
that because where we are, just the reality of being there in Monroe, there's a big school system around us which tends to kind of drain students or lose students as the year goes by.
Yeah.
And we're an option for them. So I'm sure we've been picking up students regularly since we opened, and I think we're going to continue to do that. It's a pretty good bet that we are. So, yeah, our actual numbers are going to go up considerably from where they are. But I
Yeah,
guess
we-
ADM
yeah.
is set in stone.
Yeah, part of it is what is the number that the state uses to evaluate it.
Teaching,
year
sure.
five. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch, or the OCS will. Okay, 2:45. It's 2:53. Need to hear from Mr. Whalen on the access.
Yes, so we do want to talk to you about the eligibility criteria and some of the revisions that we'd like to propose to this board. But before I do that, I'm happy to share some exciting news that I think all of you know, and we shared with the state board last week, that we applied for and were awarded a $10 million supplement to the Access program. So over the summer, we submitted an application to expand the reach of the program, to give out 60 subgrants instead of 50 over the course of 5 years, putting a lot of resources toward the Access Fellowship and also supporting low-performing schools and other school leaders that are not eligible for subgrant funding. So we're very excited about what that means for the program. As you remember, we awarded 9 schools of about $3.4 million total in the first cycle. We'll start the next cycle. We'll release the application on November 15th. So we have some flexibility now in the amount of subgrants that we give each year. So anywhere between sort of 8 and 12 or 13 is sort of what we plan each year. And 2 of those leaders will then be able to go through the Access Fellowship. With the additional funding, what we're starting this year, we're piloting a visiting fellows program. So we've invited 6 leaders of low-performing schools or schools that are not eligible for Access funding to go through the remainder of this year's Access Fellowship, and then next year we will officially launch an application process to take another 10 leaders through the fellowship each year of schools that are not eligible for subgrant funding. So giving more leaders an opportunity to go through the program. So ultimately, by the end of year 5, we'll have put 160 leaders through the Access Fellowship instead of just the 100 that we originally proposed in our state application. So that's super exciting. And for the Access Fellowship, I think that's off to a great start. We've had 3 sessions completed so far. We've done 2 in-person and 1 virtual. We've covered school culture, parent engagement and community engagement, teacher leadership, empowering teachers, school leadership. We released our October virtual session on intentional marketing and recruitment last week. And in November, we will be in Research Triangle Park doing addressing adverse childhood experiences and the social and emotional needs of all students. So I'm happy to send the logistical information for any board member who would like to attend either the session in November or any of the other sessions around the state for the rest of the year. So what I'd like to talk about today is we came to this board last month with updates to the application and rubric. None of those were very significant, but some of the conversations that we've had over the course of the last year, some of those comments have been brought up by this board and the state board as well, was if there's any flexibility in adjusting the eligibility criteria to allow more schools the opportunity to get access funding. So pull a PowerPoint up because it's just a little bit easier to talk through.
Mr. Chair, this is such great news, you don't mind looking at a PowerPoint, do you?
No, I'm just,
There's really only
It's
one
like
slide
3
that's
slides.
important.
I mean, that's
I've said,
fine.
I think it's more about limiting the number of slides. No more than 5, right?
I'm done with 50 slide
Can't do it
PowerPoints.
anymore.
Yeah, there's really only one slide that's important. So while that's coming up, I'll say that the planning and implementation only categories have not changed the eligibility for that. So essentially, planning year schools, obviously they don't have student data that we would be able to assess, so it's about the strength and the merits of the application. And the implementation only, I'll sort of talk through our decision not to change that criteria in itself, but for the eligibility for expansion and replication applicants, we did want to expand that a little bit to create a larger pool of what we consider high quality schools in the state that would be eligible. You can just go straight to slide 4 if you would, please. So the first there's 3 avenues essentially to be eligible for expansion or replication. The first avenue is what is currently outlined in the state application. So schools that need an A or B school performance grade and to have met or exceeded growth for at least 2 of the previous 3 years. That is the current eligibility criteria, and by that measure, after the data was released for last school year, 59 schools are eligible under the existing criteria. So the 2 avenues that we've added are, the first one is for schools that were an A or B school for 3 consecutive years prior to their application cycle, sort of regardless of growth. So if they've been an A or B school, regardless of growth status, we would invite them as high performing schools to apply for this, apply for a subgrant to expand or replicate, and therefore allowing more educationally disadvantaged students into those high performing schools. And that would add 6 to the total pool. And then the third avenue is schools that have been a C or better and met or exceeded growth for 3 consecutive years. So we felt that that was particularly for schools that have at least been a C and are sort of on the cusp of getting into that A-B range, but have been meeting and exceeding growth consistently for 3 years. Those would be schools that we would ideally hope that this funding and the fellowship would give the resources for those schools to sort of push into the range of A or B. And that would add 17 schools to the total pool. So that brings the total pool of applicants for eligible for expansion and replication to 82 schools. And the reason we didn't expand the implementation only, as you know, that they would have to have an A or B and met or exceeded growth for any year of data that they have. First, when we ran the number, it really didn't affect any schools. There are a couple that already have the A or B and met or exceeded growth that would be eligible. But essentially, particularly for the C and met or exceeded growth, we felt that for expansion schools that have a track record of doing that and a track record of meeting and exceeding growth, we felt more confident in those being eligible for applicants than for a school that may just get that in 1 year and not necessarily have shown a track record of that growth. So currently, you still need an A or B and to have met or exceeded growth for implementation only. And really, when the numbers came out, that doesn't affect. I think there's only 1 school that has got a C and met growth, and otherwise we're looking at schools that would have already been eligible anyway. So this is what we'd like to, a recommendation that we'd like to take to the state board next month to include in the application for this year.
I just want to make sure I understand, Jay. We're talking about including, so the school A has to want to expand or replicate.
Right.
And if so, and they meet one of these 3 criteria, then they would be eligible to apply for the grant.
Correct.
I move we recommend to the state board that this new qualifications, eligibility criteria be adopted. There.
I second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
I know the state board's very much in favor of adding that additional criteria too, as we heard last week, so thank you for doing that.
It's going
How
to be
many
more
additional
work for you grant
schools?
reviewers.
How many additional schools did I hear you say? Was 17?
17 via the C and Meadowbrook City Growth, and 6 via the AB for 3 consecutive years. So 23 additional.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? All right.
Thank
Jay,
you.
what qualifies as expansion? What is expansion? Just getting bigger? The school gets bigger?
So the way it's written in our state grant is expanding grade levels or enrollment.
Okay. So just more money to do that effectively.
To expand the program, yes.
Okay.
Could it be in an additional building in the same county that serves same grades because of space constraints? Is that feasible as well?
Essentially, what we look at is expansion of the student body under the charter. There are restrictions around, obviously, like using that money for the facility, but that is an option if you're expanding the program under the existing charter.
We have schools that aren't interested in building another building, but are interested in expanding their population, so they could use this grant. With the expansion, the purpose of the grant was to help them expand their economically disadvantaged population. So it's not, we're ready to put another building in. We have some schools that are in that state, but it don't have to be a building project, just they want to increase their enrollment from 800 to 900.
I'm trying to think of the number of schools out there that are in that AB situation that aren't already at capacity physically. Do we know what that number is roughly? Have we kind of gotten a gauge of, number one, do you have room to grow within your facilities? If they're an AB school, it's likely they're not going to have additional space.
So we don't have the number that are specifically at capacity. We know that by this expansion, we have 89 schools that would be eligible for expansion, and hopefully, us expanding this criteria a little bit gives people some more incentive, and other high quality schools sort of in the conversation. But I don't know who is specifically limited by the capacity of the facility.
Do you have anyone replicating?
Not yet. We have been, and I say we generally, but the rest of the team, Barbara specifically, has been recruiting people hard for expansion.
When are
and
we going to get
replication.
a Henderson Collegiate replication? That's what I want to know. I ask him that all the time.
He's not going to do it.
Doesn't want to replicate.
He's not doing it. He said he just took it off the table.
He had been working on it.
It's hard.
They need to be
It's hard to
hard.
grow. It's hard to grow and maintain quality. And to not kill yourself
Seen that
doing
with
it.
some that have tried. Successful, as successful.
So the reality is, let the elephant out here, that we're going to have difficulty spending this money perhaps. We got to really think about how difficult it's going to be to use up this entire grant, or we feel pretty confident that there's enough capacity out there to utilize the grant monies.
I think we feel confident. I think we knew from the beginning that expansion and replication were going to be the 2 most difficult categories to get applicants for.
But the startup is probably the best use.
That's why the access team came up with these recommendations to try to expand the pool of other eligible schools. And we realize that we have 1 or 2 replications in the 5 years. We'll be happy with that. But we really, the team is putting a big effort on expansion. again, I want to give a shout out to Jay and his team. Barbara's here, and Mariana's here, and Amelia's downstairs. They're just doing a fantastic job.
Extraordinary work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. It's exciting. Very exciting. All right.
Talk about November's board meeting is the 11th, Veterans Day?
Tuesday.
It's
Wednesday.
it's a
Tuesday,
holiday,
Veterans Day.
so we're meeting Tuesday and Wednesday.
We're on slate for 12 and 13.
Yep.
What do
It's
we,
the 12th and the 13th is Tuesday and Wednesday because Monday's Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Right.
everybody understands it? Okay. Once again, I'm standing between you and the highway, so I'll try to do this quickly. State Board did discuss the Access Timeline app, and rubric, and as Jay just said, you just made some recommendations to change that. They did discuss the proposed change to the virtual charter school agreement, and we did discuss the 2017-18 performance framework. As far as OCS updates, Jay just mentioned we did get a $10 million supplement grant. Our office has made risk assessment visits to Three Rivers, Lakeside, Uproar, Charlotte Choice, and Blue Green. And we made one new visit to Picasso.
How is
We had our
Picasso?
first- Excuse me?
Is Picasso all right?
Yeah, Dr. Williams tries to visit every new school in their initial year. So, we made that visit. We had our first Leading and Learning at Healthy Start, where Alex put on a low-performing training camp, highly successful. We participated in the Yale conference. We made a presentation to Triangle Realty, met with a large group of their realtors to talk about school choice, and had a lot of questions about that. We went to Discovery's ribbon cutting. And next week is our annual Charter School Leadership Institute. It's going to be next Thursday and Friday, and it's held at Envision. We'd love for everybody to come to it. Thanks for all your hard work. I don't know if legal's gonna get mad at me for this, but our office would like to put SE May on governance non-compliance, so FBS can put them on a month-to-month. Okay?
Fine by me. What's the,
Is that something that your office can
Our
just
office
do?
can't do it, I just wanna make sure you guys are okay with that.
I think we
Can't hurt.
suggested going monthly last time anyway, so if that's the process, then yeah, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah,
I think
they
we
can
got
definitely
yelled
be
at.
on governance non-compliance.
Yelled at.
We have to follow the
Teacher of the Year
process.
advisor?
Yes. The two of the last three Teacher of the Year came to see us about a month or so ago. And they would like to try to elevate the charter school Teacher of the Year position, and they'd like to ask us about the possibility of the Teacher of the Year to sit on, the charter school Teacher of the Year to sit on the advisory board as an advisor position, similar to what the State Board of Ed does with their Teacher of the Year. I think it's a great idea. We have talked to leadership about it, so want to make sure that the full body is in favor of it.
Is their school gonna be okay with them being gone that much?
Yeah.
That's the issue. If the school's gonna have to give them a day off once a month or 2 days off, but if it can be worked out logistically, we'd like to recommend we do that.
Sounds good. All right.
Thank you.
All right, so November 12 and 13, and I think that's it.
Rita will likely be a official member in the next hour and a half or so. So, are you sure you still want it?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Are
deliberating.
you calling somebody right now?
You guys wanna take a vote?
I'll take her phone.
Welcome and condolences. Just kidding.
So what's our
good.
outlay for
Hi
that?
Heather, by the way, I didn't.
Yeah,
meet you
next
yesterday.
month.
How are you? I know we have
How many
eight
applications?
applications.
There will be 8 clarification interviews, and I'm planning, unless there's objection, to probably put all the clarification interviews on one day, because the next day you're gonna have a lot of renewal interviews, and low performing presentations will also begin. So, unless you would like to split up the clarification interviews, it seemed to me that it made more sense to just do them all at once.
We do them all the first day.
Sounds good to me.
And if you have any feedback on North Carolina Cyber's presentations and how you would like those to go, it was adjusted this month. I still am open to feedback about how you'd like that to go and any,
I thought it was much better without the PowerPoint.
Much better.
I move we adjourn.
So moved. All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
To get all of it done, though? So, well, I'm glad to have input and easy to read. Yeah, I was having trouble just following.
I know. That's the issue. Because there's documents in this system, there's documents here, and then fillers out.
And then the spreadsheet on this, this is why you see, and you print things out, this is how you do the same thing, so you can see that. Yeah, in a whole way. Yeah. Yeah.
But so when I do it initially, this is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Old school, just like paper.
Make your notes.
Whatever. Drive safely. This month I didn't. The trainer, just tried to keep it.
Which gets crazy, at least it's,
I know, like I said,
maybe
I
up to
started,
10
like